Well, morning friends, and welcome to Jocelyn's Twilight Years memoirs of a really old model. I am here today to talk about a subject that I have been worrying about for a little while because I'm not sure if it's really an appropriate topic for me to broach. However, I am going to broach it because I really do want to be of some value to my fellow models, especially those who are starting out. It's very hard in this profession to find out anything about money. People are quite cagey and they don't like to talk about it. And I guess that's compounded by me, at least, working in the British industry primarily. And in Britain, we're embarrassed about money, I think, a little bit. So, once upon a time, friends, let me tell you a story. I was at a spanking shoot with a client who turned out to be an arse in many ways. It is he who I was referring to in my mansplaining film when I talked about the man who said, "Do you know what Victorians are?" That was him. Now, he was very annoying in many ways during the shoot. There were two models there, me and one other, and at one point he said to us, "You know, I'm making more money today than you two put together." And I thought, wow, you are a cock. And I also thought, how do you know how much money we make? Because yeah, you're shooting with me for 4 hours today, but you don't know what I'm doing with the other 4 hours. And now, with the aid of this video, I will be able to tell him definitively whether or not that is the case. He probably isn't watching because we had a big falling out immediately after the shoot in which I had to tell him, "Your behaviour with the feather duster was utterly unacceptable," which is a sentence I never thought I'd have to write. And he wrote back, firstly apologising, then writing back again 5 minutes later going, "Actually, I'm not sorry, and I hope you're all going to blackmail me." And I thought, well, if you will spend a shoot going on about how rich you are and then behave inappropriately, you're kind of opening yourself up to that, aren't you? I didn't blackmail him. And I sometimes wonder if that is a failing of mine. What we're talking about is how much you can earn as an independent model. You can't see most people's fees online. I've always been very clear about advertising my rates so that everyone knows that they're paying the same as everyone else. And also because I've always thought it probably helps other models to contextualise where their rates should be. So just for context, if you haven't seen my profile notes, I charge £325 per day for a 8-hour shoot, or I charge £225 per half day, which is 4 hours. Sometimes people want shorter shoots and then I occasionally negotiate that differently, but I try to get people to choose one or the other of those. Or I charge £1,000 for a 5-day week. So if I were to manage to get full day shoots 5 days a week and I didn't do anything else, I would earn 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, £1,625 a week. That's not how it necessarily works. Of course, I'll have a full day here, I'll have 2 half days there, I'll have a day when I only shoot half a day and then I travel for a long distance, and of course I've got all the expenses too. So rather than talk about what I earn per week, I'm going to talk about what I earn per year. So when I started out as a model, I was obviously inexperienced, but I was in a less competitive marketplace than I would find myself in today. So I started off by charging £250 per day or £40 an hour, and for the first couple of years of my career I earned around £30,000. My expenses have always been pretty steady at about a quarter of my turnover, so my turnover was £30,000 and my expenses would have been around £7,500. Then after a couple of years I got a car, I started working harder, I started working more days in the week, I got a bigger client base and my income as a result grew. So I got up to around £40,000 a year, and then it stuck around there for probably about 5 years. Then it gradually started to creep up. In 2012 my turnover was £47,000 and my expenses remained about a quarter of that. And I thought at that point I'd probably reached the peak of my earning potential. And at that time I also thought that was probably the peak of any independent model's earning potential, unless she was working to harder levels than I thought that for an art nude stroke fetish model, I'd kind of reached the peak of what was possible. However, in the years since that, I have discovered that by mobilising my fan base and shooting myself with a selfie stick and selling those pictures and shooting video of myself and doing privately commissioned videos, I actually could bring my income up. So these days, having been in the business for 15 years, my turnover is £70,000, and I would be tempted to say that's probably as high as it's going to go, but really, who knows? I don't want to assume that anymore. So I think that I am probably an unusually successful model, simply because most models don't stay in the business this long. A lot of models only stay with it for less than 5 years, which just doesn't give you the time to build that in most cases. So I think that probably I am at the upper end of what independent models usually earn, except for those who have maybe mobilised their fan bases more successfully than I. Perhaps they do adult TV channels, perhaps they do webcam, and I don't know, because I've got plenty of friends who do those things, who seem to have great lifestyles, but I've never dared ask them, excuse me, do you earn more than me? I'm assuming they do. So I'm thinking that maybe your absolute top that you could aim for as an independent model, you might be able to hit 100 grand turnover, but I suspect that it would be hard to get much beyond that. If I'm wrong, and if you are an independent model who earns more, I would love to know, because I think it would be really helpful to share that information, just so models starting out maybe don't lose heart when their first couple of years aren't particularly lucrative. I find myself now in a position which I appreciate massively, and I know it's because of my very loyal photographers and my incredibly loyal fans. I know that I just have you guys to thank for it, but I find myself having earned enough and saved enough that I am able to make provision for my future, so that unless I want to, I won't have to be an 80-year-old nude model. I may want to. Modelling is a challenging job for your joints and for your social life and for your eating habits, for that matter. I look forward to a time when I can just eat 8 Mr. Kipling cakes in one sitting. I will, one day. Maybe I'll be that kind of 80-year-old. I was very worried about doing this topic, but I do hope it is helpful to you, because if you're a model starting out, it can be really frightening. So stick with it, sisters, because there is money to be made from it. It's not going to make you a millionaire, probably, but you can have a really fun life and make enough money to have holidays and houses and nice things. So that is me signing out. This wasn't very ranty, was it? I really should go back to the story of that terrible man who asked me if I knew what Victorians were, tried to run a feather duster between my legs, for the love of God. And finally, okay, I'm going to share this, too much information, he got an anal hook out of his bag and said, "Do you know what this does?" And it's kind of obvious, it's not a complicated device. The name tells you everything you need to know. "Oh, shall I show you how it works?" No, thank you. And then he tried to show me. So that's why he got a very strict letter from the Jocelyn saying inappropriate behaviour. And he deserved to be blackmailed. Some people just do. Please subscribe, please comment. It means the world to me. It really does. Thank you. Take care.